That's Wabu. Hey, girl. Hey. Top of the day. Oh, there we go. Top of the day, beautiful people. Top of the day. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. I'm testing something here on YouTube today. I was watching my video yesterday and I noticed it towards the end. It did like a lot of skipping, like pausing for a second and jumping over. It almost seemed like a couple little sections were edited out. I'm like, what is going on with this video? I don't know. I don't know. It could very well be my laptop. It could be me. It really could. I don't know. I'm gonna have to work through all the kinks. I gotta sit and test stuff. I don't know. I may need to I don't know, I may need to do some adjusting with the mic or something, but that doesn't answer the question why the video like skips a few seconds and stuff. I think that's a internal YouTube problem. I don't know. Like I said, then again, it could be my laptop. I don't know. But we'll find out sooner or later, right? Hopefully sooner than later. Leviticus. All right, y'all. 7:29. Y'all, I had this. It was weird. I really don't have any kind of time. I don't even remember half the dream. All I remember is there was this old ancient person, right? And like when I say ancient, I mean like y'all ever seen what's that movie? It's like a superhero movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Y'all seen that little figure, like the little tree man? I think his name is Groot. Him. Okay. So it was somebody who was way taller than me, and they look almost like Groot, but they were like, I guess they were human. They look human, but it reminded me, he gave me the whole feeling that he was extremely, extremely ancient. He looked human, but I don't think he was really human. I think it was some type of angel or something. And what's crazy, I don't even remember half the dream. I'm just mentioning it because I'm still trying to think about everything that happened. When I was on the treadmill this morning, I was like doing like my little voice warm up and everything. The dream came back to me because it's a part of like my voice warm up. They say, wake up, wake up. You know, I try to get my voice so it's not all crackly in the morning, right? So I do like these little voice warm ups. And so when I got to that part, wake up, the dream came back to me, at least that little part right there. And I was like, oh, snap. I'm like, what in the world? But in the dream, I don't know. It really could be symbolic or something. I don't know, but it was really weird. But the guy, the old ancient guy was telling me, he said, the dead are going to arise soon. Like, no, he said, the dead are going to arise soon. I said, what do you mean the dead are going to arise soon? Like, it was weird. And from the indication I was getting from it, I was like, the TV wasn't on. I don't know. It was really weird. I'm not saying it has any kind of significance or anything. It's just kind of throwing me off a little bit this morning. I don't know. I ain't got no kind of interpretation. I probably shouldn't even share it with you. But anyway, that's what I'm sitting here thinking about, trying to pull myself together. But it was really, really weird. And there was more parts to that dream. I just really can't remember it all at this point. But anyway, y'all, happy Monday. Happy Monday. I hope y'all enjoyed y'all weekend. Today, it is day 60 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 729, y'all. Today, we are reading Leviticus 12, 13, and 14. And in the Legends of the Jews, we are picking up on page 258. So let's go ahead and get started here with the Shema. And we'll go ahead and get into this reading, y'all. Okay. Remember, the Shema is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Good morning, Uncle James Brown. Okay. Hear, therefore, Israel, observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily as Yahuwah, the God of our fathers, has promised us in a land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our God, he is one God. And you shall love Yahuwah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do these commandments before Yahuwah our God as he has commanded us. Tiffany, hey girl, hey, Sawubona. Okay, y'all, let's hop right to it. Leviticus chapter 12. Okay. Boom. Okay. Mom. Yahuwah said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. If a woman becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son, she will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her menstrual period. On the 8th day, the boy's foreskin must be circumcised. After awaiting 33 days, she will be purified from the bleeding of childbirth. During this time of purification, she must not touch anything that is set apart as holy, and she must not enter the sanctuary until the time of her purification is over. If a woman gives birth to a daughter, she will be ceremonially unclean for 2 weeks, just as she is unclean during her menstrual period. After waiting 66 days, she will be purified from the bleeding of childbirth. This, I ain't gonna get into too much detail, but this gives more detail actually about what's happened and why they had to wait so long. Like there's a small portion in, I believe it was Jubilees. There's also, I think we may have read over that portion already. When we first started the Legends of the Jews, it talks about this and the waiting period. And there was another manuscript that talks about why this is so. And I got to go back because I read it a while ago, but I know I definitely read it in 3 different manuscripts, right? I'm gonna look for those, and if I find them, I'll put the reference for y'all so y'all can look at it, right? Okay. When the time of purification is completed for either a son or a daughter, the woman must bring a 1-year-old lamb for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a purification offering. She must bring her offerings to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will then present them to Yahuwah to purify her. Then she will be ceremonially clean again after her bleeding at childbirth. These are the instructions for a woman after the birth of a son or daughter. If a woman cannot afford to bring a lamb, she must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. One would be for the burnt offering, and the other would be for the purification offering. The priest will sacrifice them to purify her, and she will be ceremonially clean. That's a pretty short chapter. Okay, Leviticus chapter 13. Okay, serious skin diseases. Then this is why I always recommend, I'm like, y'all have to go back and look and read what Yahuwah's law says, all right? When people, I don't know, people have just been trained the law, oh, no, done away with. We don't need it. Don't need to even look at it. All that is done away with. They don't realize it. It's literally everyday rules of like just keeping yourself clean and just common sense things that you may have forgotten while you were in the captivity of Egypt. Like, this is how you are to conduct yourself within a family, within a community, because we know you had to lay all this stuff out, because we know y'all was pretty much able to do almost anything, so to speak, in Egypt without any kind of regard to laws of cleanliness or just being a good, decent human being. Not that a lot of them were, but it was enough of them doing shenanigans while they were in Egypt under the bondage where Yahuwah had to reteach them about this, how to conduct yourself as a decent human being and keep yourself clean, right? And not to put, like, tell kids, no, don't put that in your mouth, that's dirt. No, you don't eat off the floor. Like, it's simply like those type things, right? And so it's going through these, even if you break out in a disease, how you can tell if it's contagious or not, right? So that's what this says, right? And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the laws that are instituted across the world, and you can clearly see it here in America because we live here, and even some things in the medical field, some of these precautions that they take, they pull it right from here, right? Okay. Leviticus chapter 13. Then Yahuwah said to Moses and Aaron, if anyone has a swelling or a rash or discolored skin that might develop into a serious skin disease, that person must be brought to Aaron, the priest, or to one of his sons. The priest will examine the affected area of the skin. If the hair in the affected area has been turned white and the problem appears to be more than skin deep, it is a serious skin disease. And the priest who examines it must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. But if the affected area of the skin is only a white discoloration and does not appear to be more than skin deep, and if the hair on the spot has not turned white, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest will make another examination. If he finds the affected area has not changed and the problem has not spread on the skin, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 more days. On the seventh day, the priest will make another examination. If he finds the affected area has faded and has not spread, the priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. It was only a rash. If the person's clothing must be washed, and the person will be ceremonially clean. But if the rash continues to spread after the person has been examined by the priest and has been pronounced clean, the infected person must return to be examined again. If the priest finds that the rash has spread, he must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean, for it is indeed a skin disease. Think about people, I guess you can really see some modern day cases of leprosy, but you don't necessarily see it on TV unless you're watching a movie or something. But also think about people with the skin, it's a skin disease, vitiligo, right? So we can see that as well, right? And vitiligo doesn't necessarily causes like the breaking of the skin and oozing of the skin, but it is considered a skin disease, right? Okay. But a lot of people, what they don't know is, and I've seen it happen, and I've mentioned, because I know a couple people with it where it's spreading, and I see the constant spread, like you're black, but now you're almost white, right? Like you're losing the pigmentation, the color of your skin. They need to change their diet. Like I've seen it happen. There was this gentleman, I don't know where they live at now, but they lived in Hampton, Virginia. And this was when I was going to some of the messianic things that they had quite a few years back, right? And we noticed there was this one guy, he was married, black guy, had a family, they had like 7 kids, right? Mostly girls. But I noticed, because I had seen him before, and I had noticed that he had started losing color. Clear, when you see people losing the pigmentation, oh, you got something going on. But this time I understood, like I could look at you and tell, like, we've seen you before, like your diet is catching up with you, right? And he started losing color around his lips, and all this started changing around his ears and in his hands and stuff. And they knew it wasn't natural, so they had they really trying to find out why his skin was changing, because it wasn't something that ran in his family. I'm telling you guys, it's your diet, what you put in your mouth. And here's what they found out after a couple of years. For one, just right off top, it began to reverse. You know how it began to reverse? Because they literally went to keeping Yahuwah's commands by cutting out cutting out the unclean meats and stuff. And they even went as far as to cut out meat completely. He went completely plant-based, and he went raw for a couple of years. And you know what happened? What Yahuwah say? He said, if you find that you have a disease that's upon you, he said, we read it yesterday, I, being the great physician, when you turn to my commands, I will come and heal you, right? Dude went plant-based. Matter of fact, once he saw his color start coming back, his entire family went plant-based, because look, we're not better than you did it. If that started happening to you, it's possible that could start happening to us. The vitiligo reversed. It was spreading. The next time I saw him was probably like 2 years later. All of his color was back. Like they were so excited about that. And people was asking, said, we changed our diet. We stopped eating meat, everything. eating the junk, he said, and start drinking more water, make sure it's properly hydrated, he said, and we noticed, and of course, he threw it up. He said, we kept y'all's commands the best we could. He said, and my colors started coming back. So when I tell people, they say, like, I have some friends, I don't even know if they pay attention, if they listen. I try to show them some stuff, but I can only place it there before you, but that's what started happening. All of his color came back. It reversed, right? Okay. Anyone who develops a serious skin disease must go to the priest for an examination. If the priest finds a white swelling on the skin and some of the hair on the spot has turned white, and there is an open sore in the affected area, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. In such cases, the person need not be quarantined, for it is obvious that the skin is defiled by the disease. Now, suppose the disease has spread all over the person's skin, covering the body from head to foot. When the priest examines the infected person and finds that the disease covers the entire body, he will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. Since the skin has turned completely white, the person is clean. But if any open sores appear, the infected person will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. The priest must make this pronouncement as soon as he sees an open sore, since the open sores indicate the presence of a skin disease. However, if the open sores heal and turn white like the rest of the skin, the person must return to the priest for another examination. If the affected areas have indeed turned white, the priest will then pronounce the person ceremonially clean by declaring, "You are clean." If anyone has a boil on the skin that has started to heal, but a white swelling or a reddish white spot develops in its place, that person must go to the priest to be examined. If the priest examines it and finds it to be more than skin deep, and if the hair in the affected area has turned white, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. The boil has become a serious skin disease. But if the priest finds no white hair on the affected area and the problem appears to be no more than skin deep has faded, the priest must quarantine the person for 7 days. If during that time the affected area spreads on the skin, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean because it is a serious skin disease. But if the area grows no larger and does not spread, it is merely a scar from a boil, and the priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. Okay, so when you hear clean, ceremonially clean, and ceremonially unclean, excuse me, it's telling you that you cannot participate in any of the temple festivities, right? You can't, if you're ceremonially unclean, you cannot participate in any of the ceremonies that are taking place at the temple or at the tabernacle, right? You need to stay away. Otherwise, you can contaminate everybody and everything. We don't need that. Go home. We'll check on you later. If anyone has suffered a burn on the skin and the burn area changes color, becoming either reddish white or shiny white, the priest must examine it. If he finds that the hair in the affected area has turned white and the problem appears to be more than skin deep, a skin disease has broken out in the burn. The priest must then pronounce the person ceremonially unclean, for it is clearly a skin disease. But if the person finds no white hair on the affected area and the problem appears to be no more than skin deep and has faded, the priest must quarantine the infected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must examine the person again. If the affected area has spread on the skin, the priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean, for it is clearly a skin disease. But if the affected area has not changed, somebody just fell off the bed or jumped down off that top bunk. I don't know if y'all just heard that big boom in the background. I'm sorry. But if the affected area has not changed or spread on the skin, hold on, let me go back. But if the affected area has not changed or spread on the skin and has faded, it is simply a swelling from the burn. The priest will then pronounce the person ceremonially clean, for it is only a scar from the burn. If anyone, either man or a woman, has a sore on the head or chin, the priest must examine it. If he finds it is more than skin deep and has fine yellow hair on it, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. It is a scabby sore of the head or chin. If the priest examines the scabby sore and finds that it is only skin deep, but there is no black hair on it, he must quarantine the person for 7 days. We all know about quarantine these days in the days of COVID, right? They're doing the same thing. On the 7th day, the priest must examine the sore again. If he finds that the scabby sore has not spread and there is no yellow hair on it, it appears to be only skin deep. The person must shave off all the hair except the hair on the affected area. Then the priest must quarantine the person for another 7 days. On the 7th day, he will examine the sore again. If it is not spread and appears to be no more than skin deep, the priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. The person's clothing must be washed, and the person will be ceremonially clean. But if the scabby sore begins to spread after the person is pronounced clean, the priest must do another examination. Like you need to be tested again. Test them again. All these COVID tests they're giving people, test them again. After this many days, you get tested again after 2 weeks. We need to make sure you are ceremonially clean to mix among the people of the world, right? If not, you got to go back into quarantine again. But if the color of the scabby sore does not change and black hair has grown on it, it has healed. The priest will then pronounce the person ceremonially clean. If anyone, either man or woman, has shiny white patches on the skin, the priest must examine the affected area. If he finds that the shiny patches are only pale white, this is a harmless skin rash and the person is ceremonially clean. If a man loses his hair and his head becomes bald, he is still ceremonially clean. And if he loses his hair on his forehead, he simply has a bald forehead. He is still clean. However, if a reddish white sore appears on the bald area on the top of his head or on his forehead, this is a skin disease. The priest must examine him, and if he finds swelling around the reddish white sore anywhere on the man's head and it looks like a skin disease, the man is indeed infected with a skin disease and is unclean. The priest must pronounce him ceremonially unclean because of the sore on his head. Those who suffer from a serious skin disease must tear their clothing and I was about to make a joke. Those who suffer from a serious skin disease must tear their clothing and leave their hair uncombed. They must cover their mouth and call out, "Unclean, unclean." As long as the serious disease lasts, they will be ceremonially unclean. They must live in isolation in their place outside the camp. Now, suppose mildew contaminates some woolen or linen clothing, woolen or linen fabric, the hide of an animal, or anything made of leather. If the contaminated area in the clothing, the animal hide, the fabric, or the leather article has turned greenish or reddish, it is contaminated with mildew and must be shown to the priest. After examining the affected spot, the priest will put the article of clothing in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must inspect it again. If the contaminated area has spread, the clothing or fabric or leather is clearly contaminated by a serious mildew and is ceremonially unclean. The priest must burn the item, the clothing, the woolen or linen fabric, or piece of leather, for it has been contaminated by a serious mildew. It must be completely destroyed by fire. Like I said, nope, it's good for nothing but a fire. Let's go. Get them coals, make it hot, toss it in. But if the priest, he's just talking on the phone loud. Okay. But if the priest examines it and finds that the contaminated area has not spread in the clothing, the fabric, or the leather, the priest will order the object to be washed and then quarantined for 7 more days. Then the priest must examine the object again. If he finds that the contaminated area has not changed color after being washed, even if it did not spread, the object is defiled. It must be completely burned up. whether the contaminated spot is on the inside or the outside. But if the priest examines it and finds that the contaminated area has faded after being washed, he must cut the spot from the clothing, the fabric, or the leather. If the spot later reappears on the clothing, the fabric, or the leather article, the mildew is clearly spreading and the contaminated object must be burned up. But if the spot disappears from the clothing, the fabric, or the leather article after it has been washed, it must be washed again. Then it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with mildew that contaminates woolen or linen clothing or fabric or anything made of leather. This is how the priest will determine whether these items are ceremonially clean or unclean. Titi, hey girl, hey. Shalom, Auntie Kay. Okay. Last chapter for today, y'all. Leviticus Chapter 14, cleansing from the skin disease. And Yahuwah said to Moses, the following instructions are for those seeking ceremonial purification from a skin disease. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at a place outside the camp. Notice how the priests are, they're acting as doctors, physicians, right? Okay. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at a place outside the camp. If the priest finds that someone has been healed of a serious skin disease, he will perform a purification ceremony using 2 live birds that are ceremonially clean, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. The priest will order that 1 bird be slaughtered over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take a live bird, the cedar stick and scarlet yarn, and the hyssop branch, and dip them into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. The priest will then sprinkle the blood of the dead bird 7 times on the person being purified of the skin disease. When the priest has purified the person, he will release the live bird in the open field to fly away. The person being purified must then wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean and may return to the camp. However, they must remain outside their tents for 7 days. On the 7th day, they may again shave all their hair from their heads, including the hair of the beard and eyebrows. They must also wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, each person being purified must bring 2 male lambs and a 1-year-old female lamb with no defects, along with the grain offering of 6 quarts choice flour moistened with olive oil and a cup of olive oil. Then the officiating priest will present that person for purification along with the offerings before Yahuwah at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take 1 of the male lambs and the olive oil and present them as a guilt offering, lifting them up as a special offering before Yahuwah. He will then slaughter the male lamb in the sacred area where sin offerings and burnt offerings are slaughtered. As with the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is a most holy offering. The priest will then take some of the blood of the guilt offering and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. Then the priest will pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his finger into the palm of the oil and sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before Yahuwah. The priest will then apply some of the same oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will then apply the oil remaining in his right hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before Yahuwah. You notice if you guys ever grew up with your mama with the anointing oil, and they put the cross on your forehead, like all these stuff, the rituals and stuff that they did for prayer, they kind of pull it from here. They ain't use blood, they use the olive oil, but all these things have a origin, right? And although we may not understand, they were keeping to some of the stuff, but not really understanding what they were doing. But as I read through this, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they knew this is what they were doing, who was growing up doing this, right? But anywho, But anyone who is too poor and cannot afford these offerings may bring one male lamb for a guilt offering to be lifted up as a special offering for purification. The person must bring 2 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil for the grain offering and a cup of olive oil. The offering must also include 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. Ooh, let me say something. If there's ever, for those that still eat meat, if there's ever a food shortage and pigeons show up and y'all still eat meat, just know and understand that pigeons are clean, right? Let me tell you something. People that live in the hood, there was always a surplus of pigeons, right? There should have been nobody going hungry living in the hood. When I realized and understood that it said that pigeons are a clean bird, I'm like, well, hold on. So how's people in the hood starving to death, trying to get food stamps when Yahuwah has supplied a whole abundance? Like they greet you. What's up, my G? Like the pigeons greet you coming into the neighborhood. You know why? Because when we're ignorant of Yahuwah's word, we just gonna starve to death when food is sitting right in front of our face, right? I mean, I would have been eating tomatoes and stuff, and because I'm plant-based now. But back then, I'd have been like, go ahead and cook that up. Get them birds. Okay. The priest will also pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He would dip his right finger into the oil of his palm and sprinkle some of it 7 times before Yahuwah. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before Yahuwah. Then the priest will offer 2 turtle doves or the 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. One of them is for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering to be presented along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before Yahuwah. These are the instructions for purification for those who have recovered from a serious skin disease who cannot afford to bring the offerings normally required for the ceremony of purification. So remember, like after they did this, y'all, and they were cleaning the birds, they was cutting them, draining the blood and stuff. What did they do? Think about what was being bought. They're bringing flour and oil. After they're killing it, they're draining out the blood. Father, thank you for forgiveness for our sins, and thank you for this food. What did they do with it? Like whatever was considered a burnt offering, that portion totally belonged to Yahuwah, and it burned up till it was nothing more than ashes, right? But whatever was left, notice how they cooking it, and then they dividing it amongst themselves. They're eating, right? All right, let's break bread. You clean, we're going to break bread. We thank y'all for healing you. Go ahead and eat. This is the portion for the priest. Thank you. Everybody else, dig in. Then Yahuwah said to Moses and Aaron, when you arrive in Canaan, the land I am giving you as your own possession, I may contaminate some of the houses. Hold on, let me read it over. Then Yahuwah said to Moses and Aaron, when you arrive in Canaan, the land I am giving you as your own possession, I may contaminate some of the houses in your land with mildew. The owner of such a house must then go to the priest and say, it appears that my house has some kind of mildew. Before the priest goes in to inspect the house, he must have the house empty, so nothing inside will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. Then the priest will go in and examine the mildew on the walls. If he finds greenish or reddish streaks and the contamination appears to go deeper than the wall's surface, the priest will step outside the door and put the house in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must return for another inspection. If he finds that the mildew on the walls of the house has spread, the priest must order that the stones from those areas be removed. The contaminated material will then be taken outside of the town to an area designated as ceremonially unclean. Next, the inside walls of the entire house must be scraped thoroughly, and the scrapings dumped in the unclean place outside the town. Other stones will be brought in to replace the ones that were removed, and the walls will be replastered. Excuse me. If y'all ever watch like the Home Network, what is it? The Do It Yourself Network, where they're purchasing homes, they're remodeling homes. Or if you ever watch some of the show, I think it's like Homes on Homes. Like the man, his last name is Holmes. His advice on homes that you're purchasing, they'll go in and they'll come across some homes with mildew, and they're following the same process, with the exception they may not quarantine it, but they will go in and inspect the mildew if there's mildew within the walls. And I see them performing some of the, aside from the quarantine, they'll go in and do some of these things, and they'll pull out, if it's only like surface deep, they'll go in and they'll remove those, and they'll replace them with the clean beams and walls and stuff, and it'll be replastered. Some stuff though, they have to completely demolish all the way to the ground and start over, because it's just that bad, and there's no way of removing it all. Like the structure is thoroughly infiltrated with mildew, and you can't just like plaster over that, because it's just going to get progressively worse, and people get sick and die because of that. This is what this is talking about. But if the mildew reappears after all the stones have been replaced and the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest must return and inspect the house again. If he finds that the mildew has spread, chill. If he finds that the mildew has spread, the walls are clearly contaminated with a serious mildew, and the house is defiled, it must be torn down, and all its stones, timbers, and plaster must be carried out of the town to the place designated as ceremonially unclean. Take it to the dump. Those who enter the house during the period of quarantine will be ceremonially unclean until evening, and all who sleep or eat in the house must wash their clothing. But if the priest returns for his inspection and finds that the mildew has not reappeared in the house after the fresh plastering, he will pronounce it clean, because the mildew is clearly gone. To purify the house, I'm going to send everybody back upstairs. Hush. To purify the house, the priest must take 2 birds, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. He will slaughter one of the birds over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the cedar stick, a hyssop branch, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, and dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird and into the fresh water. Then he will sprinkle the house 7 times. When the priest has purified the house in exactly this way, he will release the live bird in the open field outside the town. Through this process, the priest will purify the house, and it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with serious skin diseases, including scabby sores and mildew, whether on the clothing or in a house, and a swelling on the skin, a rash, or discolored skin. This procedure will determine whether a person or object is ceremonially clean or unclean. These are the instructions regarding skin diseases and mildew. Hey, Isaiah, Bella, Jace, y'all go upstairs. Let's go. All right, guys, so let's hop on here to the Legends of the Jews and pick up where we left off yesterday. Now, y'all moving too slow. Let's go. Page 258, if you got the big book. If it's a smaller book, it's volume 3, and the section is titled Miriam's Will. Upstairs. Yeah, y'all still being too loud. Go. Bella and Jace upstairs now. Thank you. Okay, y'all. Let me take a sip of water before we get started. Okay. All right. Relieved as they were of all the cares of subsistence through the gift of manna, it was plainly the duty of the Israelites to devote themselves exclusively to the study of the Torah. When therefore they slackened in the performance of this duty, the punishment in the form of lack of water immediately overtook them. This was the first time they actually experienced this want. For at Mara, nothing more than alarm that this need might come upon them had caused them to murmur and complain. In their distress, they once more unreasonably cast reproaches upon their leader and disputed with him, saying, Wherefore is this, children, that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? Moses replied, As often as you quarrel with me, you tempt Yahuwah, but Yahuwah performed wonders and excellent deeds for you. As often as you dispute with me, that his name may sound in glory. Hold on. Let me read the whole thing over. Moses replied, As often as you quarrel with me, you tempt Yahuwah, but Yahuwah performeth wonders and excellent deeds for you, as often as you dispute with me, that his name may sound in glory throughout the world. In spite of the injury they had done to him, Moses prayed to Yahuwah that he might aid them in their distress and also stand by him. O Lord of the world, he said, I am surely doomed to die. Thou biddest me not to be offended with them, but if I obey thy words, I will certainly be killed by them. Yahuwah replied, Try thou to act like me. As I return good for evil, so do thou return to them good for evil, and forgive their trespass. Go on before the people, and we shall see who dares to touch thee. Hardly had Moses shown himself to the people when all of them rose reverently from their seats, whereupon Yahuwah said to Moses, How often have I told thee not to be angry with them, but to lead them as a shepherd leads his flock? For it is for their sake that I have set thee on this height, and only for their sake will thou find grace, goodwill, and mercy in my sight. Yahuwah then bade him to go with some elders to the rock on Horeb and fetch water out of it. The elders were accompanying him there that they might be convinced that he was not bringing water from a well, but smiting it from a rock. To accomplish this miracle, Yahuwah bade him smite the rock with his rod, as the people labored under the impression that this rod could only bring destruction. For through its agency, Moses had brought 10 plagues upon the Egyptians in Egypt and at the Red Sea. Now they were to see that it could work good also. Upon Yahuwah's bidding, Moses told the people to choose from which rock they wished water to flow. And hardly had Moses touched it with his sapphire rod, the rock which they had chosen, when plenteous water flowed from it. The spot where this occurred, Yahuwah called Masha and Meribah, because Israel had there tried their God, saying, If Yahuwah is Lord over all, as over us, if he satisfies our needs, he will further show us that he knows our thoughts. Then we will serve him, but not otherwise. I'm like, I see why y'all wanted to. He said, you know what, Moses, move out the way. I'm going to kill all of them. We just going to start over with you, right? I see why. Jeez. The water that flowed for them on this spot served not only as a relief for their present need, but on this occasion, there was revealed to them a well of water, which did not abandon them in all their 40 years wandering, but accompanied them on all their marches. Yahuwah wrought this great miracle for the merits of the prophetess Miriam. Wherefore it is also called Miriam's well. But his well dates back to the beginning of the world, for Yahuwah created it on the second day of the creation. And at one time it was in the possession of Abraham. Isaiah.
That's me.
Who is that, Josh?
Yeah.
Do me a favor. Go quiet them down. I know they're upstairs, but their voice is extremely loud.
They need to be in our room.
Yeah, tell them to go in the room until I'm done. Their voices, I know y'all can hear them. I'm sorry. All right, y'all. It was the same well that Abraham demanded back from Amalek, the king of the Philistines, after the king's servant had violently taken it away. But when Abimelech pretended not to know anything about it, I wot not who have done this thing. Abraham said, Thou and I will send sheep to the well, and he shall be declared the rightful owner of the well, for whose sheep the water will sprout forth for to water them. Hold on, I think I read that wrong. Thou and I will send sheep to the well, and he will be declared the rightful owner of the well, for whose sheep the water will spout forth to them, to water them. Okay, so both of you send your sheep, I'm gonna send my sheep. If the water flows for your sheep, that means it's your well. If the water flows for my sheep, that means it's my well. Okay. And Abraham continued, from the same well we shall have the seventh generation after me. The wanderers in the desert draw their supply. This well was the shape of a sieve-like rock, out of which water gushes forth from as a spout. It followed them on all their wanderings, uphill, down dale, and wherever they halted, it halted too. And it settled opposite of the tabernacle. Thereupon the leaders of the 12 tribes would appear, each with his staff, and chant these words to the well. Spring up, O well, sing ye unto it. Nobles of the people digged it by the direction of the lawgiver with their staves. Then the water would gush forth from the depths of the well and shoot up high as pillars. Then it discharged itself into great streams that were navigable, and on these rivers, the Jews sailed to the ocean and hauled these treasures of the world therefrom. The different parts of the camp were separated by these rivers, so that women visiting each other were obliged to make use of ships. Then the water discharged itself beyond the encampment, where it surrounded a great plain in which grew every conceivable kind of plant and tree, and these trees, owing to the miraculous water, daily bore fresh fruits. This well brought fragrant herbs with it, so that the women had no need of perfumes on the march, for the herbs they gathered served this purpose. This well furthermore drew down soft, fragrant kinds of grass that served as pleasant pouches for the poor, who had no pillows or bedcloths. Upon the entrance of the Holy Land, this well appeared and was hidden in a certain spot of the Sea Tiberias. Standing upon Carmel and looking over the sea, one can notice there a sieve-like rock, and this is the well of Miriam. Once upon a time, it happened that a leper bathed at this place of the Sea of Tiberias, and hardly had he come in contact with the waters of Miriam's well when he was instantly healed. As a punishment because they had not sufficient faith in Yahuwah and had doubted whether he could fulfill all their wishes, and had grown negligent in the study of the Torah and the observance of the laws, Yahuwah turned Amalek against them during their sojourn in Rephidim, where they had committed these sins. Yahuwah dealt with them as did that man with his son, whom he bore through the river on his shoulders. Whenever the child saw something desirable, he said, Father, buy it for me. And he fulfilled the child's wish. After the son had in this way received many beautiful things from his father, he called to a passing stranger with these words, Hast thou perhaps seen my father? Then indignantly the father said to his son, O thou fool that sittest on my shoulder, and all that thou did desire, I procured for thee, and now dost thou ask that man, hast thou seen my father? Wow. Thereupon the father drew the child off his shoulder, and a dog came and bit him. So did Israel fare. When they moved out of Egypt, Yahuwah enveloped them in 7 clouds of glory. They wished for bread, and he gave them manna. They wished for flesh, and he gave them quails. After all their wishes had been granted, they began to doubt, saying, Is Yahuwah among us or not? Wow. Then Yahuwah answered, You doubt my power. So surely as you live, you shall discover it. The dog will soon bite you. Then came Amalek. Whew. This enemy of Israel bore the name Amalek to denote the rapidity with which he moved against Israel. For like a swarm of locusts, he flew upon them, And the name furthermore designates the purpose of this enemy who came to suck the blood of Israel. This Amalek was the son of Eliphaz, the firstborn son of Esau. And although the descendants of Jacob had been weaker and more insignificant in earlier times, Amalek had left them in peace, for he had excellent reasons to delay his attack. Yahuwah had revealed to Abraham that his seed would have to serve in the land of the Egyptians, and had put the payment of this debt upon Isaac, and after his death upon Jacob and his descendants. The wicked Amalek now said to himself, if I destroy Jacob and his descendants, Yahuwah will impose the Egyptians' bondage upon me, grandson of Esau, descendant of Abraham. Therefore, he kept himself in restraint as long as Israel dwelt in Egypt. But only after the bondage predicted to the seed of Abraham had been served in full did he set out to accomplish the war of annihilation against Israel, which his grandfather Esau had enjoined upon him. No sooner had he heard of Israel's departure from Egypt than he set out against them and met them by the Red Sea. There indeed he could work them no ill, for Moses uttered against him the ineffable name, and so great was his confusion that he was forced to retreat without having effect his object. Then for some time he tried lying hidden in the ambush, and in this wise molesting Israel, but as length he gave up this game of hide and seek, and with a bold front revealed himself as the open enemy of Israel. Not alone, however, did he declare war upon Israel, but he also seduced all the heathen nations to assist him in his enterprise against Israel. Although these declined war upon Israel, fearing that they might have to fare like the Egyptians, they agreed to following the plan of Amalek. He said, follow my expedition. Should Israel conquer me, there will still be plenty of time for you to flee. But should success crown my attempt, join your fate to mine in my undertaking against Israel. So Amalek now marched from his settlement in Seir, which was no less than 400 parasangs away from the encampment of the Jews. And although 5 nations, the Hittites, Hivites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites, had their dwellings between his home and the camp of the Jews, he insisted upon being the first to declare war upon Israel. Yahuwah punished Israel, who had shown themselves an ungrateful people, by sending against them the enemy that was ungrateful, too, never recalling that he owed his life to the sons of Jacob, who had him in their power after their brilliant victory over Esau and his followers. In his expedition against Israel, he made use of his kinsmen. Before going over to open attack, he lured many unsuspecting Jews to death by his kindly words. He had fetched from Egypt the table of descent of the Jews, for every Jew had there to mark his name upon bricks produced by him, and these lists lay in the Egyptian archives. Familiar with the names of the different Jewish families, Amalek appeared before the Jewish camp, and calling the people by name, he invited them to leave the camp and come out to him. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, etc., he would call, come out to me, your brother, and transact business with me. Those who answered the enticing call found certain death at his hands, and not only did Amalek kill them, but he also mutilated their corpses, following the example of his grandson Esau by cutting off a certain part of the body and throwing it toward heaven with the mocking words, "Here shalt thou have what thou desirest." Wow. In this way did he jeer at the token of the Abrahamic covenant. So y'all know what he did, right? Y'all know what portion of the body he cut off of them after he killed them, right? Yes, it was their man parts. Like he lured them out there by deceit. After he killed them, he cut off their penises and threw it in the air to mock Yahuwah at the covenant. that he set between him and Abraham, that all of his descendants should be circumcised, right? There's also talk about this in the book of King Og. Remember, I was telling y'all about him, one of the giants, Nephilim. I have that book, right? And in it, it talks about how they hated the circumcised, right? Like there was the words, they weren't like curse words, but you can tell that they were blasphemies against the Most High. They absolutely hated him, and they absolutely hated those of us who kept to his commands. They referred to us as the circumcised, right? And they would literally do this. They would cut off to mock Yahuwah when they would kill, if they had the opportunity to kill any of those who kept the covenant of Yah, they would literally cut their penises off and they would throw it in the air mockingly at Yah, to say that we don't give two about this covenant. And neither, I'm just like, I'm like, y'all gonna get it, y'all in trouble. But this is what this is talking about. I'm not sure if any of you have that book, but it's there. So it's really good. Like I said, if you can handle some of the stuff of what was happening from the perspective of the other people who were present when this stuff was going on, you would get a bigger picture and a better understanding of what was really happening, right? And then some of the things that Yahuwah is telling his people to do or not to do, there's a very, 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 very specific reason why. And if you understood and knew the other side of the story, you would immediately get why. So long as the Jews remained within the encampment, he could, of course, do them no harm, for the cloud enveloped them as under its shelter. They were well fortified as a city that is surrounded by a solid wall. The cloud, however, covered those only who were pure, but the unclean had to stay beyond it until they were cleansed by a ritual bath. And these Amalek caught and killed. The sinners too, particularly the tribe of Dan, who were all worshippers of idols, were not protected by the cloud and therefore exposed to the attacks of Amalek. Moses did not himself set out to battle against this dangerous foe of Israel, but he sent his servant Joshua, and for good reasons. Moses knew that only a descendant of Rachel, like the Ephraimite Joshua, could conquer the descendant of Esau. And all the sons of Jacob had taken part in the unbrotherly act of selling Joseph as a slave. Hence, none of their descendants might be able to stand up and battle against the descendant of Esau, for they who had themselves acted unnaturally to a brother could hardly hope for Yahuwah's assistance in a struggle with the unbrotherly Edomites. Only the descendants of Joseph, the man of who had been generous and good to his brothers, might hope that Yahuwah would grant them aid against the unbrotherly descendants of Esau. In many other respects, too, Joseph was the opposite of Esau, and his services stood his descendants in good stead in their battles against the descendants of Esau. Esau was the firstborn of his father, but through his evil deeds, he lost his birthright. Joseph, on the other hand, was the youngest of his father's sons, and through his good deeds, he was found worthy of enjoying the rights of a firstborn son. Joseph had faith in the resurrection, while Esau denied it. Hence, Yahuwah said, Joseph the devout shall be the one Joseph the devout shall be the one to visit merited punishment on Esau, the unbelieving. Joseph associated with two wicked men, Potiphar and Pharaoh, yet he did not follow their example. Esau associated with two pious men, his father and his brother, yet he did not follow their example. Hence, said Yahuwah, Joseph, who did not follow the example of wicked men, shall visit punishment upon him who did not follow the example of the pious men. Esau soiled his life with lewdness and murder. Joseph was chaste and shunned bloodshed. Hence, Yahuwah delivered Esau's descendants into the hands of Joseph's descendants. And as in the course of history, Only the descendants of Joseph were victorious over the descendants of Esau. So will it be in the future. At the final reckoning between the angel of Esau and the angel of the Jews, the angel of Reuben will be rebuffed by the angel of Esau with these words: You represent on who had illegal relations with his father's wife. The angels of Simeon and Levi will have to listen to this reproof. You represent people who slew the inhabitants of Shechem. The angel of Judah will be repulsed with these words: Judah had illicit relations with his daughter in law. And the angel of the other tribes will be repulsed by Esau's angel when he points out to them that they all took part in selling Joseph. The only one with whom he will not be able to repulse will be Joseph's angel. They're so loud. To whom he will be delivered and by whom he will be destroyed. Joseph will be the flame and Esau will be the straw burned in the flame. And we are going to stop right there today, beautiful people. We'll pick this up tomorrow. That ends this section. Actually, tomorrow, this is still chapter 1. We'll actually finish up. All of this that we've been reading since we started volume 3 has simply been chapter 1. So we'll finish up reading this tomorrow, and we may get a chance to start in chapter 2 of volume 3. So with that being said, beautiful people, I hope y'all enjoyed the reading today. We read Leviticus 12, 13, and 14, and in the Legends of the Jews, we read pages 258 to 261. So let's go ahead and do the blessing so we can get about our day. Remember, the blessing is found in Numbers chapter 6. Verses 22 through 27. And remember, the first 21 verses is what? That's right. It's the Nazarite vow. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying on this wise, Ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name, whose name? Yahuwah's name. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Who will bless us? Yahuwah himself will bless us. All right, beautiful people, let me check for questions real quick. Sorry about all the noise. My grandbaby is over here, and when he is over here, it seems like the noise in my house is amplified like 20 times. It's just about one child. Okay, let's see. Okay, nothing over here on Facebook. Boom, boom, boom. All right, we good. All right, beautiful people. Okay, that's it. All right, so I see y'all bright and early in the morning, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you in the morning. Peace.